With that, I'll yield to Chairman Jack Reed.
Mr. President.
Senator from Rhode Island.
Mr. President, I rise to express my support for the fiscal year 2022 National Defense Author for his leadership and his thoughtfulness on this bill. He's been an excellent partner throughout this whole process. Thank you, Senator. Our nation faces an enormous range of security challenges, and it is more important than ever that we provide our military men and women with the support they need to keep America safe. To that end, this bill makes great progress. It addresses a broad range of pressing issues, from strategic competition with China and Russia to disruptive technologies like hypersonics, AI, and quantum computing, to modernizing our ships, aircraft, and vehicles. It provides our service members with the resources and the support they need to defend our nation while at the same time taking care of their families. Importantly, this bill authorizes a well-deserved 2.7% pay raise for both military members and the DoD civilian workforce. And this civilian workforce is an important and integral part of our national defense, and their sacrifice must be recognized also. It also increases parental leave to 12 weeks for all service members and creates a new 2-week bereavement leave benefit for both military and federal civilian employees. Now, I want to especially note that this bill includes historic, sweeping reforms to the Uniform Code of Military Justice and how the military investigates and prosecutes sexual assault and other offenses, including murder, manslaughter, kidnapping, and many other crimes. Just as my Senate colleagues and the President's Independent Review Commission and survivors advocate groups have called for, this bill takes prosecutorial power from the chain of command for these cases. Our bill creates a special trial counsel, highly special prosecutors who will be the exclusive, binding, and final decision-making authority over whether to prosecute these offenses. This is a sea change for the military justice system, and I'm grateful to my colleagues in both chambers and on both sides of the aisle for working together to achieve this historic reform for the well-being of our military men and women. Indeed, we listen to survivors. Senator Inhofe and I traveled to Fort Hood to speak to enlisted personnel, men and women, to non-commissioned officers, to the range of individuals there. And we learned a great deal. And we also try to take their lessons and incorporate them in this legislation, and I think we have. The world is as dangerous and complex as it's ever been. We depend on the military to answer the call in these challenging times, and we owe it to them to ensure the policies we enact on this matter and others preserves this nation's military power and cohesion. I respect those who might see this matter differently with regard to our reforms at UCMJ. But this bill makes our country and our troops more secure because we listen to advocates and experts to reach a compromise with the House of Representatives. This year's defense bill also makes excellent progress toward meeting the challenge of long-term strategic competition with China and Russia. It invests in the people, the platforms, the infrastructure, and the game-changing technologies that will define the future. It extends and modifies the Pacific Defense Deterrence Initiative, or the PDI, and it reiterates the Senate's intent to improve our force posture in the Indo-Pacific. It increases readiness and presence there, and it builds the capabilities of our partners and allies to counter the increasing threat of China. Similarly, this bill authorizes the continuation of the European Deterrence Initiative, or EDI, in recognition of the vital need to support our allies and partners in Europe as we work toward the shared goals of deterring Russian aggression, addressing strategic competition, and mitigating shared security concerns. With respect to our services, we have taken steps to improve their capabilities and their ability to fight and win. Across the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Space Force, this bill makes significant efforts to improve the readiness of our aircraft, ships, vehicles, missiles, and weapon systems. It authorizes significant increases in military construction projects, modernizing our nuclear triad and missile defense systems, and investing in cutting-edge technologies such as artificial intelligence, microelectronics, advanced materials, 5G, and biotechnology. And with regard to our withdrawal from Afghanistan, we must capture the lessons of the last 2 decades to ensure that our future counterterror efforts in Afghanistan and elsewhere continue to hold violent extremists at bay. To that end, I am pleased that this bill includes the Afghanistan War Commission Act, an amendment spearheaded by Senator Duckworth. This bill was originally crafted by the Armed Services Committee after a series of thoughtful hearings, discussions, and debates on both sides of the aisle. Through the committee markup process, we considered more than 300 amendments and ultimately adopted 143 amendments. Senator Inhofe and I introduced this bill to the full Senate with the intent of adding more amendments on the floor. Although we were not able to come to an agreement to debate and vote on several amendments on the floor, we were ultimately able to adopt amendments from senators on both sides of the aisle in the final legislation. Over the past several weeks, the Senate and the House Armed Services Committees have worked around the clock to come to an agreement on this final version of the bill. I am proud of the improvements we made throughout this process, and I was pleased to see the House vote last week in an overwhelmingly bipartisan fashion, 363 to 70, to pass the bill. We have produced a strong NDAA that both parties and both chambers can support, and the President will be able to sign. And it is fitting at this point to recognize the staff that made this all possible. In my several decades here, I have not seen the kind of concentrated effort that was necessary. While we were on the floor trying to move the bill, respond to amendments with our staff support, we simultaneously were involved with negotiations with leaders of the House and the administration. The staff literally was working 24/7. And Senator Inhofe has identified his minority staff, and I want to commend them all. They're talented and thoughtful men and women. I appreciate it. But let me specifically recognize my Democratic staff. First, Elizabeth King, my staff director, and I would be remiss if I didn't recognize John Wasson, who is the Republican staff director. And they've led their staffs admirably and with bipartisanship, diligence, and utmost professionalism. I would also like to thank the members of the Armed Services Committee staff, Jody Bennett, Carolyn Chuter, John Clark, Jenny Davis, Jonathan Epstein, Jory Feldman, Creighton Green, Gary Leland, Kirk McConnell, Maggie McNamara Cooper, Bill Monahan, Mike Noblet, John Quirk, Andy Scott, Arun Seraphin, Cole Stevens, Soleil Sykes, Carrie Lynn Michalki, Haley Becker, Patrick Shiloh, Allison Warner, Leah Brewer, Debbie Chiarillo, Joe Gallo, Leslie Ashton, Cami Pease, Brittany Amador, Griffin Cannon, Nate Green, Brandon Kasprick, Sophia Kumali, Tom Majacomo, and once again, my staff director, Elizabeth King. Thank you, Elizabeth. From my personal office, let me also thank Neil Campbell and Elise Walsh, who have done so much to get us going. And as the Senator from Oklahoma pointed out, we could not get our bill through without the floor staff. They do a remarkable job, and they don't get the credit they deserve. So let me thank Gary Myrick, Tricia Engel, Dan Tinsley, Brad Watt, Stephanie Peonin, Nate Osler, Rachel Jackson, and Liza Patterson. You've been part of this process for the last several weeks, and you've done a remarkable job. We thank you very much. Let me conclude also by thanking our colleagues in the House. Chairman Smith and Ranking Member Rogers collaborated, negotiated, and ultimately together we reached this legislation. I urge all of my colleagues to vote for this excellent and indeed exceptional bill. And with that, Mr. President, I would yield the floor.